Hi everybody, welcome to Simply Scuba. Here I have a Paralenz Vaquita dive camera. So this is a sort of action sports style camera, but that's actually been designed by scuba divers for scuba divers. So the previous version really turned a lot of heads because it actually has it has a depth sensor inside of it, which means that it can color correct itself as you change depth. So with a lot of cameras, if you hit record and then you change your depth, then everything starts to turn really blue that you have to try and correct later, or correct with filters or lighting and all that kind of stuff. Whereas the Paralenz, because it has an algorithm on the inside and a depth sensor, as you go down, it's actually automatically correcting the color change. So that's very, very clever. The sort of torch-like style of it makes it very practical. This is slightly different from the previous version of the Paralenz in that you actually get a little screen on the back which helps you line up and sort of take your shots, either photo or video. The main upgrades, or another upgrade to this, is that it films in 4K as well, so that's really the modern standard as far as recording goes. All in all, it's a tough little camera. Let's see what you get inside of the box. Okay, so let's take a closer look at what you actually get inside of the box. So this is the box that it comes in. Nice, neat little package. Let's just have a quick look on the outside. So first of all, really handy, it tells me exactly what's inside of the box. So one Paralenz Vaquita camera, one click mount, one USB-C cable, a travel bag, and 3 extra O-rings. On the back, explore differently. Paralenz Vaquita is an easy to use as easy to use as a dive light, and packaged with everything you need to get beautiful underwater footage. There's a QR code for, I imagine, more information on the Vaquita, and that's about it. So very eco-friendly packaging, lots of cardboard. There's some information on the inside of this sleeve about the Vaquita. If you want to know more about Vaquitas. Opening it up, we have 2 smaller boxes. It's past the parcel in here. So I'm just going to get that box out. So first of all, we have 2 little cards. Get your fins on, your Vaquita is here. Thank you for your patience. Nice little note from the CTO Peter. That's quite nice. Another card, your adventure starts here. To get the best underwater recording experience, make sure that you have the Paralenz app installed on your phone. I already have it on my phone, and then you can scan the code. So these QR codes are really quick and easy to get information. And then a second smaller box. So I'm going to do the small box first, and it says open here, so I'm going to open there. Inside we have one USB-C cable, so that'll be charging cable, and I imagine you can download some dives to your PC via that. This will be the click mount. So this is slightly different from the previous version of the Paralenz. The Vaquita, I don't think is compatible with the older sort of mounts of the previous Paralenz. So this one has this kind of bungee mount, which has a standard tripod mount, so you can screw it onto a tray or something, and then that will wrap around the camera itself. I'll show you this a little bit later, but this is just the sort of the click mount. You also have book of words, quick start guide, which, yeah, I imagine is just going to show you how to do all of the basics about the camera. We have a little bag, a Ziploc bag, which, opening it up on the inside, there is more stuff inside of there. So we have some spare O-rings. So these are spare, you don't have to install these when you first get the camera. These are if the original ones that are currently fitted to the camera wear out. These are replacement ones. And we have some replacement bits. So one of them looks like the actual, like the shutter trigger button, and another one is a kind of a collar, which I imagine is from that sort of rotating ring. And there's a teeny tiny little spring, if you can see that. So you get a few spare parts with it, which is handy. Onto the final box, which is the heaviest bit, which I imagine has the camera in. If I open that up, inside of that little bag, which is quite neat, with the camera inside. There's nothing else inside of that. That's just a cardboard box. Okay, little bag. This is fairly robust material, so that'll be quite nice to keep your camera safe inside. And then inside we have the Vaquita. So a little bit chunkier than the previous Paralenz. It doesn't have that blue ring; it's a black ring compared to the original version, and there's a few little changes that I'll mention a little bit later. But all in all, yeah, it feels pretty solid. I'm never too keen on things that feel a little bit like flimsy. This one, it feels pretty tough, which makes me that much more sort of confidence with it. The rotating ring has got a definite positive feel. You've got to do a lot of movement to actually make it turn, and then when it does sort of click into position, it does a real positive click. So that's quite nice. The trigger button is pretty easy to use. It's got a nice sort of almost crenellation to it, so you get something sort of really positive to really use. I've got a pair of thick gloves. I'll see if I can sort of use the camera with those chunky gloves. But yeah, all in all, it feels a very solid camera. Let's take a closer look at it. Okay, so the camera itself. So first of all, let's look at the lens. So on the front of it, it actually shows you some quite important information. So the first one is that it films in up to 4K, which is really nice. That's the kind of the modern standard, sort of decent quality of your underwater footage. Also films in a fairly wide angle. I'll show you some footage a little bit later that I'll sort of film live whilst I'm doing this, just so that you can see the quality of the footage that actually comes out of it. It's waterproof down to 350 meters, which is certainly deeper than I can go, so I'm quite confident with this camera. Moving down the body, so we have the shutter button here that I mentioned earlier, and that's spring loaded, so that's how you're going to be taking your photos and interacting with the camera. There's two different like button presses to it. You either have the single like push of a button, or you can hold it down, and that's how you're going to navigate the menus, and it's quite intuitive, which is handy. Moving further down, so in here I imagine we've got these two sort of water contacts. So these are going to be for your sort of your depth sensor and all that kind of stuff, because the main thing about the Paralenz and the Vaquita is that it has the DCC, which actually adjusts the white balance the deeper down it goes. So the camera is actually, it always knows how deep it is, and then it color corrects the footage to the point where it's getting rid of the blue, so everything looks more natural, and you don't have to go into sort of Premiere Pro and all those kind of video editing software to actually get rid of the blues. So you can record from the surface and then sort of keep going down, and you're not going to have to do clever stuff in the background. The camera is actually doing it for you. And it can also log dives and put the information as an overlay on the screen. So when you're actually recording something, it shows, oh, you right here, you're at 20 meters or whatever it is. So very, very clever stuff. Around the body we have this these kind of raised T-rails, similar to the previous version of the Paralenz, but I think they're ever so slightly different. I don't believe the previous versions, so the mounts and things will fit onto the Vaquita, unfortunately. But you do get this mount with it as standard, and it has these little hooks on it and this rubbery section here, so that's just going to grab hold of the T-rail, and then if you push it on, that just clicks into position. Oh, maybe I need to use that to help me out. So that sort of fits in, and that way you can kind of mount it so that that tripod mount is on the bottom as a traditional camera, or on the side if you want to mount it onto your mast strap, or sort of at any angle. It gives you that a bit more control over sort of the orientation of the camera, which is pretty handy. If I just take that off quickly, then we have the control ring. As I mentioned earlier, you just rotate it round, so we'll have settings here, and then the log, and then it will go through to just the on-off screen to switch it on and off, taking photos as well as video. That's another clever thing about the Paralenz. If you set it to this mode, if you just like press a shutter, it'll take a picture, but if you hold it down, as long as you're holding down that shutter button, it'll take video. So if something interesting happens and it's set to like photo mode and you suddenly want to take video, you don't have to like control the ring and then change the mode and go into it. It's just hold it down and it will record video. So that's quite nice. The bottom cap is slightly different compared to the previous version of the Paralenz. Previous version just used to unscrew. This one does rotate, but it won't unscrew because you have this little collar, and that's how you remove that. So if you pull that back and then pull the cap off, it's not easy to do because you don't want it just falling off. But there's no sort of unscrewing or screwing back on and cross-threading. You can't do that. So it's just kind of a push on, push off. Taking a quick look at the cap first before we continue. So we have this little lanyard loop, very handy, just so that if you ever drop the camera, it's still attached to you. And then we have a little glass window on the back, just so that you can see the screen. On the inside, you might be able to see there, you actually have 3 of those O-rings that I was mentioning earlier. So if you do need to sort of replace those, that's where you get to them, and it is worth checking them, making sure they're nice and clean, there's no dust or hair or anything on them, and there's just a very fine sort of film of like a silicone grease just to make sure it's sealing effectively. On the back of the camera, going back to the camera, so we have a micro SD card slot. Doesn't come with one. I do have one with me. I'm just going to pop it in right now. Just so that I can show you all the features. And then below that you have a little screen. Now this is a full color screen, and it's a viewfinder as well, so you can actually line up your shots, which is really handy. And then just below it you have a USB-C sort of port for the USB cable. So I'm just going to switch it on really quickly. So rotate it to the on position, and then hold down the slider for about 4 seconds. It vibrates, which is quite handy. It's not an aggressive vibration, it's just a gentle sort of buzz. And there you can see the screen is starting to switch on with Paralenz and the Paralenz logo, and showing that it's on. Just some information inside of this screen, nothing overly interesting, but if we then rotate it around to settings. So the first one is start Wi-Fi. So this has this is to connect it to your phone, which I'll show you in a little bit. It can actually produce its own sort of Wi-Fi broadcast, so that you can then connect to the app, and that way you can download your dives and you can do all sorts of clever stuff. One thing about the Paralenz is that it actually has a built-in sort of GPS locator, so you can actually sort of tag where your footage is taken. Then when you upload it to the app, it shows you on a little map, which is quite cool. DCC, so that's the color control. You can switch that off if you want to white balance it yourself. The video, I'm just going to dip into video. So resolution 4K, but you can change that if you so wish. So 1080p, 2.7K or 4K. At the moment, I'm just going to leave it set to 4K. Frames per second, at the moment it's set to 60, but you can dial that down to 30 if you want a slightly smaller file size. So it's quite easy and fairly intuitive to navigate around. You only have that one button and then the selector ring, so it's quite intuitive. Holding it down is like a select, but then just a flick of the switch is just a cycle through. On this you have 2 custom modes, and these are set on the ring here and here. So that way, if you want a certain setting other than just standard photo or standard video, you can create your own custom modes, so that when you're in the water, you just switch to that one whenever the opportunity arises, and then it's recording as you want it to. So that's very very clever. If I change it to video quickly, you'll be able to see a little bit of the screen that you can line your shots up with. So that's quite handy. The previous Paralenz, I don't believe, had a this sort of back window viewfinder, and actually lining up shots was a little hit and miss. So that's why they put this this screen in. It's actually angled, which you might be able to tell from the sort of overhead shot, but yeah, so if you're sort of holding it in front of you, it's quite natural. You don't have to hold it up to your eye to be able to see it. Okay, so so now I'm going to do a quick test with my gloves on, make sure I can still use it properly, and show you what the footage actually looks like. Okay, so time for the chunky glove test. So I got some 5mm gloves on. Yeah, these are 5mm, and yeah, let's see if we can use the torch. So the first thing is changing the selector ring. So that's pretty easy, even with chunky gloves on, because you got that sort of cross-hatching effect on it. You get a decent amount of grip on the on this selector ring. And then if I just take some quick video, so holding that down, yep, so that's recording has started. You might be able to see that on the screen up there. As far as sort of super macro goes, it doesn't do too well. I'm just going to sort of point it at myself, see if that records fairly well. So you have to keep it a good like 30 centimeters away from your subject. So if you're trying to take pictures of teeny tiny little things, it's almost better to not poke it right in its face, because it tends to sort of lose focus. But as far as moving around, especially at 60 frames per second, it does pretty well. And this is filming in 4K as well. You can dial it down if you want to go up to higher frame rates. But yeah, all in all, it does a pretty good job, and it's easy to use even with chunky gloves. That little vibration function is quite nice. You get that hepatic feedback where it's quite a positive, yes, you've actually done something. And with that, with the screen on the back, makes it much easier to really know that you're lining up your shots. So yeah, all in all, it works even with chunky gloves. Okay, so I've paired the camera to my phone. This is the Paralenz app. So it is pretty quick and easy. As you saw earlier, you just sort of you use that Wi-Fi. You then connect your phone to the Paralenz Vaquita as if it's your Wi-Fi, and then you connect it through the app. So then you can import the videos and import your dives. And then, so at the moment I've got no dives because it's brand new straight out of the box. Explore, if I go back to regular Wi-Fi, that will come up with a map. And here you can see everyone else who's been using the app and uploading their footage. And if you keep going and going deeper in, you can actually view people's footage, which is kind of cool. It makes it more of a community. And then when you create your own profile, yeah, you start to upload your stories, your videos, and then you can share that with your friends. And yeah, it's all very, very clever. So on the inside, this is kind of quite interesting. So you can change the settings on the inside, which means that when you download your dives, it actually has sort of the correct information that you want to show. And a few of these is what you can have displayed on your videos when you're watching them later. They're called overlays, and yeah, you can have the dive profile, you can have the depth, you can have the water temperature, the location. You can kind of choose what's on the video when you're sort of playing it later, or you can have nothing at all if you just want the pure sort of 4K footage. Okay, so yeah, that's the Paralenz Vaquita. It's a decent, small, compact little dive camera. It's shaped like a torch, which is very, very different to the traditional boxy style camera, but you can still mount it pretty anywhere you want. The main selling point for me is in that DCC, that color control system, in that you don't have to keep continually white balancing the camera every time you go to take another photo or take some video. It's automatically white balancing itself, and even if it does need a little bit of tweaking after the dive, at least it's done most of the work for you. So very, very clever. Yeah, rechargeable battery on the inside. You don't have to worry about changing the batteries, and yeah, it comes in a neat little package, and you do have a greater range of mounting options. Instead of just having to fit it to a tray or holding it in your hands, you can quite literally mount it to your mask and have that POV shot whilst you're in the water. You can use it with cold water gloves, sort of 5mm gloves. Very easy to use. It films in 4K as well, 60 frames per second, which is fantastic. It's probably better than this camera, to be brutally honest. Yeah, it is definitely a winner in my books. There's going to be more information on our website, more of the technical specs and numbers and stuff on our website, simplyscuba.com. There's going to be a link down in the description below for that. Yeah, check it out on the website. Thank you for watching, and of course, safe diving.